I'd like to open the Wednesday, April 24th, 2024 Zoning Board of Appeals hearing. Roll call. McGuire? Here. Havelis? Here. Stressman?
Present.
Orlick?
Here.
Raisinin?
Here.
We have a quorum. First thing we'd like to do is we have a new crossover member from our Planning Commission. As you know, the State Zoning Enabling Act requires us to have a person that not only sits on the Zoning Board of Appeals, but also comes to us from the Planning Commission. And Mr. Havelis is joining us this evening, so welcome aboard.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And our next order of business is going to be election of our chair and our vice chair. If you recall, last meeting of 23, we adopted our schedule for 24 because our meetings have just been so infrequent. So at this point, I would open the floor for nominations for chair. Do we have a nomination for a chair?
I will nominate Commissioner Raisinin as chair. Or
I'll second that.
Do we have any other nominations? Seeing none. All those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, I'm going to turn the meeting over for the election of our vice chair to our new chair, Madam Raisinin.
At this point in time, I will accept a nomination for vice chair. I would like to nominate Commissioner Orlick for vice chair.
I'll second that.
Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Hearing none. All those in favor of Commissioner Orlick being our vice chair, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition? Thank you, Vice Chair Orlick. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any changes that they would like to make to our agenda? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve our agenda tonight?
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner McGuire and Commissioner Stressman. All those in favor of approving our agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition? Our agenda is approved. The next item on our business, up for business, is the approval of minutes from our August 23rd, 2023 meeting. Are there any changes that we need to make to the minutes from August 23rd, 2023?
Yeah, Mr. Chairperson, I have three minor corrections. All of these are in the bottom half of page 3. If we go to the long paragraph that begins with Jennifer Wolf, third line down, that should be exorbitant rather than absorbent amount of signage.
Yes, it should.
Okay, exorbitant rather than absorbent. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 lines down from that, points of special exception. We don't need the that, so it's simply what should read, points a special exception should be considered. Various viewing points, a special exception should be considered. And then finally, on the very last line on that page, we've got 2 hours, so the first hour can go. So it should read, inform how our zoning code is created. Lose the hour that immediately follows inform.
Yes. And I have one correction as well. I do believe, if my memory serves, Jennifer Wolf joined us by Zoom and not by telephone. Not that that necessarily matters, but she was on video. Am I wrong?
You could well be right. August is August, you know. She was here anyway.
She was here. And that might not matter.
Dave thinks she was phone also. I don't remember
Was she
seeing her.
phone?
Yeah,
I thought, she-
I was thinking we couldn't see her.
yeah, right.
I thought we saw her because one of us commented on how pretty her home office was, which was probably me that commented on.
Oh, no, I'm sure that would have been me.
But he's our stylist, keep that in mind.
Okay, we don't know. It doesn't matter.
Joined us electronically, virtually.
Joined us electronically or
Yes, there you go.
virtually. Let's just use,
That's
joined
fine.
us virtually.
There we
There you
go.
go.
Yep.
Are there any other?
This is heavy-duty stuff, you
It
know.
really is. Are there any other changes to our August 23rd, 2023 minutes?
That's what I got.
Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to accept these minutes as corrected, as amended.
Motion to accept as amended.
Do we have a support?
Second.
All those in favor of accepting the minutes as amended, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Our minutes as amended are accepted. Mr. Kinch,
All righty.
let's see. The next item, what did I do with my agenda, is communications. Mr. Kinch, do we have any communications?
Everything's related to the case that we'll share with you here later.
All right, no communications. Public comment. This is the time during our hearing where the floor is opened up to anyone who wishes to come forward and speak. We reserve this time for comments that are not related to a case being presented this evening. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board? Anybody on Zoom?
Nobody on Zoom?
There is no one who wants to give a public comment. I am going to close the public hearing. Tonight, we have one case to present to the board. Before we begin, I would like to state our board procedures. In accordance with our established bylaws and board procedures, the appellant will be called forward to state their case. Following the appellant's presentation, the public hearing will then be opened. Anyone who wishes to address the board will come forward, sign in, and state their name and address, which will be made part of the permanent record. Each person will be allowed to speak for 5 minutes. In addition, each person will be allowed to address the board only once unless they have new and pertinent information to share. The public hearing will then be closed. Any correspondence received regarding the case will be presented to the board. The board will then enter into discussion. All motions will be made in the positive to avoid confusion. This does not necessarily mean the person making the motion is in favor of the request. It will take 3 positive votes to approve a request. Any request which is denied shall not be brought back to this board for a period of 1 year. The board reserves the right to ask questions of the appellant at any point throughout the hearing. In the event only 3 voting members are present, the appellant has the right to postpone the hearing of the case until the next meeting up to the time their case is called. We have a full house tonight, so we will hear tonight's case. Mr. Kinch, if you would please introduce the case to us.
Yeah, good evening. We have the one case here tonight that we've identified as case number 24-01. Ignore the typo on the top of this slide. This is a case that had been filed by Andy Tyson, Konwinski Construction, on behalf of Graf Buick GMC Cadillac dealership that is located at 116 North Mission Street. They're looking to expand their operation on the smaller parcel directly north of their site that was the former site of the Sprint cellular phone dealership. And they are looking at a variance under section 154.410 subsection UII. This section deals with the screening requirements for automobile display areas. We have the dealership that had been expanded in 2014 and in 2012, and we'll share that information here with you shortly. The property at 222 North Mission Street is Zone CD4. The use is permitted in the district, however, it is regulated under a special use permit. Future land use designation is mixed use low, which is less intense than the CD4, but still provides needed services through a mix of building types. The zoning on the adjoining properties, to the north, we have commercial uses that are Zone CD4, as well as to the south and to the west. And then we have CD3 residentially zoned property directly to the east that shares a boundary line with this site. Here's the pertinent sections from our zoning ordinance here. Kind of bounces around a little bit, but we start out with 154.410 BII, which is the streetscape shall separate the outdoor display area of the vehicles and the public right-of-way. And this is the restrictions placed on car dealerships in the CD4 district. By definition, street screen is defined as a type of screen situated along the frontage line or along the same plane as the facade and consisting of planted evergreen hedge or freestanding wall constructed of brick or stucco over masonry which blocks the view of parking, equipment, and other items or conditions from the frontage, provides privacy to the side yard or strengthen the spatial definition of the public realm. It also references under table 154.405A in the CD4 district, and these are the street screening requirements. We're looking at either a 3.5 to 5 foot masonry wall, or we're looking at a hedge 3.5 to 5 feet with 80% opacity within the 12 inches of grade. This is the map here that showed the expansion of the site over the years. If you recall, when we had the Sweet Onion restaurant down on the lower corner there on Broadway and Mission Street, that came before the board for consideration of a greenbelt provision. Under the former zoning ordinance, it required a 10-foot strip of grass that was landscaped, had pertinent trees and shrubs. And at the time, given this was a dealership and visibility of the vehicles to passerbys was very important to the operation. And it would be consistent with the layouts and such that they had already had on this site. The board took those things into consideration and granted relief from the greenbelt requirements and then allowed them to do almost a streetscape type features and some enhancements at the corner that allowed them to lay that site out consistent with what they already had in place. In 2012, you remember the dealership did a facelift to the building and also put a large addition on the front of it. Those were dealership requirements at the time, and the ZBA granted some relief for front setbacks as well as the display area in front of the building and waived the, and granted a variance to waive the greenbelt plantings at that time. And then to the north was the part of the original site, and that has always had less than the 10-foot greenbelt, and that's what they were trying to match up. We have large masonry wall along this border here, and then the privacy screen that extends all the way around the lot, a 6-foot wood shadow box type fencing, and that's going to be a zoning requirement as well. Now, these slides didn't turn out as good as I was hoping, but you have copies of the site plan to reference in your packet. Central Michigan Survey provided this for the applicant, gives us the as-built or the current conditions and then what they're proposing to do with the site. One of the nice features on this site, and it's going to be one of the requirements for the zoning, is to close that large drive, and it should help improve pedestrian safety along through that area. The driveway is fairly wide. They will be required to have a cross access across this site here to ensure that if they ever split these off, that we have access to get to the side street in the future. And that's been consistent with all the projects along Mission Street over the last 5 to 10 years. You'll see some of the details that they're looking at here to provide the 20 by 20 clear vision area at the corner of Chippewa and Mission Street. We talked a little bit with the applicant on the front end and asked if there could be some enhancements there in lieu of plantings. And we actually got a combination of some 5 feet of grass along with some trees through there. They were able to preserve the existing large, I believe it's a maple tree that's on the south side of the site. And this one already has the 6-foot shadow box fencing that's going to be required by the zoning. So a lot of the things have been dealt with on the front end that the Planning Commission, assuming ZBA can grant a variance this evening, will be looking at down the road. And then these are just some closer up views. They're going to be maintaining the sign that's on that site. I understand that the building is going to be used for storage related to the dealership. So activities in that building will be fairly limited. And there's our large tree there and where they're showing the driveway closure. Now I'm going to do something a little different here just because it's such a large site. I'm going to punch, rather than giving you a bunch of photos, you can see that behind the building we have our current existing sign, or sign fence rather. This driveway here, they'll probably make some improvements to clean up the damage that's in there, but I'm looking at Google Earth here, and what I wanted to show you was the larger driveway that's going to be removed as part of this development. The tree will be preserved with landscaping. They'll have landscaping around here. This band of grass will continue down through the face of this. All this will be removed. Street state feature that's down here in the right-of-way will be, there'll be no changes to that. We understand that the dumpster issues will be taken care of on their existing site, so there'll be no enclosure requirements here. And I think they added a bike rack here to comply with our zoning. So the only thing we're looking at this evening is just the streetscape, or street screen rather. So with that, I'll leave it here. Any of the board members have any questions for me? Okay.
Mr. Thiessen, would you like to come and present your case, please, on behalf of Graf?
Good evening. My name is Andy Tyson. I'm with Konwinski Construction. I personally reside at 1520 East Deerfield. Our business is located at 1900 Gover Parkway here in Mount Pleasant. As you mentioned, I am here on behalf of Graf Buick Cadillac GMC. They're excited. We're excited. We think this is going to be a nice improvement to this property. What we're hoping to accomplish here is simply to receive a variance to forego the street screen that would obstruct the vehicles that they're attempting to hopefully lease and sell to the public. We recognize that the ordinance is in place for a reason, and so we don't come before you hoping that you'll just waive it and we don't have to do it. We're hoping to compromise, which is why we proposed to try and improve the corner of this lot. Feeling like that was maybe a reasonable compromise and it would help tie in the existing corner that was previously granted a variance. Not to get too far off topic here with our application, but I would encourage the board to maybe consider a textual amendment that would look at the dealerships specifically, because if you think about a car dealership and that product that they're trying to sell being obstructed by a 3.5 to 5 foot wall or screen, it's a little bit cumbersome to try and display those vehicles. So that's really the root of what we're trying to accomplish here. We recognize, again, there are requirements for a reason, but it does put a pretty big hindrance on their ability to display those vehicles. The owners recognize the value of the existing large tree that's in place, so we're working to salvage that. And then again, add the masonry feature with some additional landscaping, but moving it towards that corner. That's kind of a summary of what we're hoping to accomplish. Brian's done a great job touching on all the other things that would be applicable to the SUP, but in working with city staff extensively to get this project to fruition, this seemed like the next critical path item was to try and reach out for this variance request so that we could then move forward with the full SUP, having this portion resolved, hopefully.
I have a question. I want to make sure that I understand, because I was actually on the zoning board in 2014. So you want the block at Mission and Chippewa to mirror that corner, to kind of mirror the feature that you put at the other corner back in 2014?
So the intent is to make it similar,
Okay,
but we would not do it identical, because that opening actually is framework for a previous vision that was part of entering into downtown. So we don't want to detract from that.
Right.
We're hoping to complement it.
Okay.
Which is why we're hoping to introduce a pair of masonry pillars that would be of a similar style and design concept, but wouldn't be the full-blown welcome to downtown entrance that we have at the corner.
That was why I was asking.
Complementary,
That was why I was
not
asking
competitive.
the question,
Yeah.
and it will have some greenery of some.
Absolutely, yep.
Okay.
So we're looking to implement some landscape feature in between a couple of pillars. And it's kind of hard because we want to maintain that clear vision, obviously, we have to. So we're trying to introduce two small masonry features that would, again, be complementary to what's existing on the other corner and really help frame the entire property. But it does include some landscaping
Okay.
as well.
That was my question.
Yeah.
Are there other questions?
Just a couple of things. First of all, a comment into, I agree with you about the need to have something that addresses car dealership. That's really nothing we can do. That's planning commission and other folks.
I'll take it up with them.
Yeah, we have to deal with things as
Fair
they
enough.
exist, okay?
Fair enough.
Secondly, there's a note in the Department of Public Works submission, and I just want to make sure we're on the same page. It says, remove the sign that is shown within the proposed sidewalk on Mission Street. You're aware of that, and that's squared away?
Proposed sign that's in the sign.
Yeah.
It's a street sign. I can't remember which street sign it is, but it's not your like the sign for the building,
Yep.
but it's one of the MDOT signs. I can't remember which one it is,
Yeah, I
but
was confused by that.
I
Brian?
suspect that it's near the opening that we're proposing to close. And
Yes.
we're fully on board with
Okay.
working with city staff and MDOT to make sure that we get those items corrected.
Okay, so
Okay.
that's squared away then, Brian, right?
Yeah, you had me concerned because it is not in fact the sign that's on the property.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I was just going by what DPW said, and I thought that may be the case, but I wanted to clarify it with
Fair
all of
enough.
us.
I
Okay?
went back by there
Yeah.
on my way here just to check to make sure that they were talking about a street sign on a pole, and they are.
Okay.
They have to be based on the wording.
Any other questions for me?
Thank you, Mr. Teeson.
Thank you.
Okay, now that we have finished questioning the applicant, we will open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Please come forward and state your name and address for the record. Nobody on Zoom?
Nobody on Zoom.
I am closing the public hearing. Mr. Kinch, could you please share any correspondence related to our case?
Yeah, you have the copy of the letter submitted by our engineering Department of Public Works staff. They talk about the clear vision and placement of the decorative pedestals that the applicant just discussed with you, which will make sure that that happens, comply with our zoning. The Mount Pleasant Fire Department went on record as looking for addressing to be posted on that building, as well as keys for the Knox box, which we can work with them on that as well. And then finally, there was a letter put in here by the applicant. There was an issue brought up regarding the fence and the lighting at the Planning Commission meeting, and they immediately went out, surveyed the site. A lot of what they had found was some maintenance issues, and I understand they're currently working through those things. I did go back and look at whether or not we've ever had any zoning compliance calls come in, and we don't have anything that was recorded on that. So there again, if somebody has an issue with the site and they want to report it, we don't have a problem going out. We just didn't have any information on it. So that was what this letter was addressing, some of the things that came up at the Planning Commission. Okay?
Okay.
And that's all I have.
Let's discuss.
I know I was involved years and years ago with a driveway issue where there was a safety issue with the previous owner, and we dealt with that. I'm really glad to see that we are, this plan calls for the closure of that access drive. I think that's a big improvement for the safety of the public and the whole area. And I think the acquisition of the additional property makes this a lot more viable situation because we now have an entire block that can be treated in the same manner, which gives us a lot more latitude in making sure we're meeting the zoning code and at the same time that we are meeting the needs of the particular use that we have here.
And I think this might be a fitting point to ask our new crossover commissioner, Havalis, to maybe talk to the Planning Commission about considering the streetscape screening requirement for auto dealerships, because you know, it seems a little bit, you know, we've granted a variance to graph before. We're considering a variance to graph again for this, and if a new dealership were to open its doors and be under this zoning code and be required to do the screen, we need to think about that, because as Mr. Thiessen said, part of the point of an auto dealership is to show off the merchandise, right? So maybe we just need to have a conversation about that as a community, and see where we fall and what we want.
I have no issue bringing that up to the planning commission. I think it makes perfect sense, and any way to kind of just streamline everything and make sure business is going according to plan. I'm down
You know,
for it.
we want our zoning code to be uniform. We want our community to look pretty and presentable to people who come into our community. I mean, our logo is Meet Here, right? We want people to come here and see a nice, pleasant community, but we also want our businesses to be able to sell their merchandise. So let's go through the are there other comments or questions, let's go through the findings of fact real quick? Okay. Finding of fact number 1 is there are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applying to the property in question or to the intended use of the property that do not apply generally to other properties or classes or uses in the same district or civic zone. Exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions include exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of a specific property, exceptional topographic conditions or other extraordinary situation on the land, building, or structure, or exceptional use or development of the property adjacent to the property in question. So where do we find on number 1?
And I think as we've indicated, the plan here would be a plan that does conform to what has been done by other auto dealerships. So we're not setting them apart, we're not giving them a special benefit. It's just simply conforming to the nature of the business that everybody else in town has done.
Right, I agree. Does anybody disagree with Vice Chair Orlick? Okay. Number 2, that such a variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of a substantial property right possessed by other properties in the same district or civic zone and in the vicinity. Again, we're,
Same thing.
keeping things uniform, as Vice Chair Orlick just said. Number 3, other comments, I don't want to rush through this.
Go ahead.
That the variance request is not one where the specific conditions pertaining to the property are so general or recurrent in nature as to make the formulation of a general regulation for such conditions reasonably practicable. Number 4, that the authorization of such a variance will not be a substantial detriment to adjacent properties.
And I think that's particularly true now that they've acquired the whole block.
Right.
We could talk about that a bit more if the Sprint store was still there, but that's gone.
You're right, that the Sprint store is the property in question. I think the one thing that we could send back to the Planning Commission to pay special attention to is that it does abut a residential property that is a private home, and that would be under the scope of the Planning Commission and the special use permit. Number 5, that authorization of the variance will not materially impair the purposes of this chapter or of the public interest. And lastly, number 6, that the need for the variance is not created by any action of the applicant or the previous owner. Okay, we have gone through the finding of fact. Is there any other discussion on the case at hand? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion on this case, if anyone would like to make one.
Okay, let me try one here. I'll try to do this slow so when they transcribe this and everybody can understand it here. I would move that we approve ZBA 24-01 filed by Andy Tyson of Konwinski Construction on behalf of Graf Buick, because it does conform with the practice of other dealerships, and also that it is adding to the safety of the area by removing an access drive to Mission. And that this positive motion is contingent upon the applicant adherence to the details set forth in their Thursday, April 11th, 2014 letter to Brian Kench. I thought that was an excellent letter, and that nails down any concern that anybody might have. So I want that, the letter and the stipulations, the promises of that letter added to the motion, so that all becomes a part of the record.
Support.
Is there any, now we have a motion and a support. Is there any discussion of the motion on the floor? Hearing none, I will entertain a vote on this motion. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition? This motion passes unanimously. The variance is granted. The next item on our agenda is old business. Mr. Kinch, do you have any old business to present to the
I
board?
have nothing under old business.
Mr. Kinch, the next item on our agenda is new business.
I have nothing under new business.
Well, this is fantastic.
I know.
The next to last item on our agenda is other business. Do you have anything
I
for the
do.
board?
Anybody, we are lacking an alternate for this board, so anybody that may be interested or know anybody that's interested in participating, definitely get a hold of us, and we can get you in touch with our administrator and get you through that approval process. Other than that, I don't have any new applications coming our way for next month, so stay tuned. It's early in the year yet, so we may have others, so that's what I have.
All right, and I lost my agenda, but I think that the next thing on the agenda is a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a support?
Support.
All those in favor of adjournment, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Oh, whoops, I banged too soon. The April 24th, 2024 City of Mount Pleasant Zoning Board of Appeals meeting is now adjourned.
Scared me with that early gavel.
I did.